Welcome back to my devlog for Aerodyn, a 2D platform I've been working on for the past couple of months for my college capstone. As I wrap up development on this project, I'll be making a few retrospective videos looking back over my design process and discussing lessons I learned along the way. Today's video will be a little different from the others, not as scripted or elaborately edited. I think a more casual style is fitting given today's topic, scheduling and motivation. I'm recording this at the heel end of the semester with graduation literally around the corner, so the time is understandably tight on my end. But there's no more point in delaying. In this video, I'll be talking about my usual design process for independent game projects, as well as issues that process has caused in terms of motivation. I'll close out with major takeaways on the subject. Let's just get into it. In all prior game design projects, usually game jams under a strict time limit, I've followed a pretty standard development schedule, or pipeline as it's called in the industry, to try and get the most out of my time. It's based in part on pipelines employed in the industry, with a few alterations to account for the reduced time frame and my status as a solo developer. The first stage is the design phase, where I write out ideas for game mechanics, level mechanics, and character designs. You might hear this referred to as pre-production in other contexts. This is usually one of the shortest parts of the process, taking about a day or so in a week-long game jam. Since I was working from a game pitch I made years ago, this stage of the process was actually mostly complete. I just had to update the pitch based on the past few years of design experience. The next stage is the prototype phase, where I work to recreate as much game content as possible, even if it isn't yet in a polished state. This is a point where I whiteboxed the level layouts and created the prototype player character. Process is usually pretty quick at this stage, but can quickly get bogged down in the complicated programming even simple game mechanics can involve. This phase is also referred to as alpha in the industry. The third stage is where my process differs from the norm. I have a stage dedicated to art and sound design. Since I don't have others making art assets or sound effects at the same time as the programming and level design, I have to hand out when I'll handle each individual aspect of design. I usually work on art just after whiteboxing, so I can implement the art assets as I polish the level design and mechanics. By the time this is complete, the game should be fairly representative of the final product. In other words, it should be in beta. The final stage is polish and bug fixing. By this point, the game is mostly finished, so it's just a matter of testing to ensure mechanics don't break under unusual situations, and adding polish to enhance the way the game feels to play through particle effects and the like. When the process is laid out so neatly, it's hard to believe that anything could go wrong. But if there's any takeaway from this entire retrospective series, it's that things can and do go wrong constantly. It isn't that surprising when you consider the broader game space. Almost every game developer, from the smallest indie studios to the most triple of AAA publishers, run into some scheduling issues during development. For large companies, the issues stem from coordinating so many creative departments: art, programming, design, sound, testing, QA, distribution, marketing, and probably several others that I haven't considered. For individual developers, such as myself, it's the inverse problem of trying to manage so many tasks as a single person. I personally experienced the distracting effect of being pulled in so many directions, which got me pigeonholed into a few small tasks that should have commanded less focus. It's a tendency I've tried to address but still have difficulty tackling in the depths of development hell. At the same time, I began to experience both burnout and a loss of motivation at work, often due to overworking one aspect of the design process. Once I fell behind the slightest bit, it was even harder to motivate myself to catch up, because the goal laid out by my schedule seemed unattainable. So with all of that said, what lessons can be learned from my scheduling mishaps? The most obvious way to resolve scheduling problems is to avoid them in the first place, again by not overscoping. This means realistically estimating the resources available to create a more realistic design plan, and not adding unneeded features during development. Next is to be much stricter and more explicit with milestones. My schedule had points where I expected to evaluate my progress, but the milestones were usually vague, such as get all of X into the game, or have Y feature implemented, rather than listing what specifically could be done to make that happen. Of course, having proper scope also makes it easier to create meaningful and attainable milestones. And lastly, it's important to take external factors into account for the schedule. I basically ignored everything else going on in my life, from classes to graduation, when designing my schedule in the first place, leaving time not only in my game schedule, but also in my daily life for rest and self-care should go a long way to maintaining momentum and motivation in the long run. I'm not sure how much I'll continue working on this project, or if I'll just apply the lessons and systems to a new project I can more easily complete, but either way, this endeavor has been eye-opening to say the least. If you followed along with this video series, I can't thank you enough, and I hope this series of videos has been informative, and that you'll join me on my next project, whatever it may be.